Welcome back. I wanted to go over about lens selection in this little tutorial as such. I've got a fantastic model. She was brilliant. She didn't move too much. She stayed quite still, unlike me, as you'll see in some of these shots. Now, what I wanted to do is take my prime lenses that I've got. So I've got a 35mm, 55mm, an 85mm, and a 135, and show you the difference in some of them lenses, to help you allow to make better decisions when picking a lens for the type of shoot that you're doing. Obviously, all of them have their pros and cons. The most lenses I actually really use for studio portraits now is my 55mm. However, I do prefer to shoot on the 85mm, but it just depends on certain elements around there. Outdoor shoots, I prefer shooting with the 135 if I can get away with it. If not, my standard is again 55 and 80. But then again, as well, with the 35mm, it comes in handy for certain scenarios on certain things. But I always find that I end up getting too close, because then I try to do like a cropped in head shoot as such, and I end up walking closer to the subject, which then inadvertently distorts the image. So if I try and stick to the 85mm and the 55mm, it stops me getting in so close to them, and then stops so much distortion on the image. So first off, I wanted to speak about the angle of when taking the photos. If I just get my brush here a second. So generally, I when I'm taking an image, what I tend to do is aim to be level between here and here. So my lens is directed about this kind of height. When I was first taught about getting down lower and shooting lower, I always tend no, well, I started off actually focusing here by accident, when obviously you still can move your focal point and focus up here. So just in case anyone makes that mistake, when people are saying to shoot from a lower angle, it doesn't mean change your where you're focusing on. Still focus on the eye or the face, but actually have your lens level with this. So this image here I took at this kind of level with my lens facing this point. Sorry, just total mind blank then. And then what I've done is this was shot on a 35mm. These three images were all shot on the 35mm, but it was just an example to take. Now, obviously, shooting on here, I done the backdrop so it was a bit above my model's head. I made the backdrop with the backdrop stand, a bit of A3 paper and some straws, and it worked out quite well. But it was ideal for demonstrating what I done. What I wanted to show you is here. So obviously it's quite close, so there are a couple of things that you can do to rectify this, to save masking around the hair and stuff like that. When you're shooting in camera, have a look at it, see if the head falls into the backdrop, because then it's just an editing nightmare for us. But obviously sometimes you haven't got much choice. It depends on the size of the room, your ceiling heights, everything plays a factor into this kind of thing. I shot this natural light, obviously. Now with this, obviously it is quite close, but that is very savable in an image. Like, they're all savable. Just this could be less work than if the backdrop was actually going halfway through the head. What some people tend to do with 35mm is shoot down. Obviously, again, I didn't actually change the distance away from the camera, I just changed the angle of the camera. So obviously now I'm shooting, oh, let me draw on the right layer. Now I'm shooting downwards a little bit this direction, well, not from the side but forward facing. So I was shooting down a little bit, but what that tends to do is make this part of the body shorter. So it can be ideal. It does make the face look slimmer. That's why when we take selfies, we hold our camera up high, because it makes your face look slimmer. But what it does also do is actually shortens your legs. So when you're shooting downwards, then you'd try and avoid taking pictures of anything maybe below waist or anything like that, just to be able to make the model not look very short. But obviously that eliminates the issue with the backdrop being so close to the hair. It gives you that little bit of extra space. Now obviously as well, depending on your studio size, you can get a little bit closer. If you go up, you can get more of an image into your photo if you're shooting from a slight angle rather than shooting straight on. So people with like tiny studios, this might be your only option as such. But if you can avoid, like if you want to do full body shots, then avoid going up, because it makes the more so like if you've got maternity or a mum and a baby or something like that, it generally makes the mums and stuff look a lot shorter. Then the other one is a definite no, regardless of any, well, no, I wouldn't say actually a definite no, depending on what type of image you're shooting for. If you want it to be like a power pose and someone looking down and being very dominant, shooting upwards is a good thing to do. Now obviously that does cause the problem more so with the backdrop going straight through the model's head, and so then you'd need to raise your backdrop up quite a bit higher to make it easier for yourselves. Now again, you could use Photoshop and mask that in and get that, but it does make the model look thicker. Now this is where you're posing. Obviously I've done straight on shoots for my model in this thing. It can make them look a bit thicker in the waist as well, from rather than shooting downwards, where it can give them a slimmer looking thing. It does give them a smaller head and can give them a wider body and wider legs depending on their shape and figure. So generally speaking, this is the angle that I try and shoot at all the time when I'm shooting images. Then what I'll do is we'll go to the full length. Now these are the different types of lenses that I've shot with. I tried keeping it the same height, the same distance. The only one that wasn't the same distance was the 135 camera, because obviously I wouldn't have been able to get the image in. I wanted to show you the full length of what it was. So with a 35mm lens, as you can see, you've got a lot of space around the backdrop. So generally what that would mean is if you're shooting a 35mm in a studio, and as an example you've got this much space, you'd end up probably coming in to this kind of size, cropping it this shape, so you're actually losing all these pixels around the edge, because as soon as you crop in to that size, then you've lost half your image. So but obviously to get the full length shot, probably could have gone in a little bit to bring this line up to the bottom of here, but obviously as you can see it gives you a lot of space around, and you'd have to do quite a lot of cropping in to get just a full size image of that one. Then I went on to the 55mm, and you can see I was the same distance away, but as you can see, if I crop in on this one, then obviously I'm not losing as many pixels. Obviously this isn't necessarily ideal, but that's like you're not losing as much as you would do with the 35mm. Then I went on to the 85mm. Oh. And again, it's probably not that different from the 55mm. Obviously, they're not lined up the same way. Probably I've got a little bit less blue space on the 85 to what I have on the 50. So again, it would avoid cropping in, and obviously I'm quite close to the toes and quite close to the head there. So if this was my only space that I had, I would choose the 55mm if the model was that size in the image, rather than going for the 85, because I've got less room to play with by the front, like by the feet, and also at the top of the head. Then the last one was the 135. Now I had to go back a bit, so it's a little bit not as good to compare. But what you do notice as well when you're shooting this, obviously, just the space that you've got around the subject sometimes can differ depending on the lens. Like the shape of the backdrop changes, even though you're at a consistent size. Sometimes the backdrop looks wider, sometimes the backdrop gets narrower, depending on your lens selection. So it is very good to pick the right lens. So what I've done with this one now, this image here, I just wanted to show you some of the distortion that you do get between the lens selection. So I went in a bit closer to shoot this image, and as you can see, this is the 35mm. We've got the backdrop going through a head, and I'm shooting at a lower level. I'm not shooting down on the image or anything like that. So then when you go to the 55mm, you can see a massive difference. Now on the 35mm, your nose, the nose looks longer and more kind of pointed. The face does look slimmer. As you can see, like the eyes are on the same plane. Now the depth of field is slightly changed a bit between the two. Wasn't too sharp on the 35 because of my inability of thinking about making sure the whole image was in focus. As you can see, that with the body shape as well, this is a bit of a flatter image, but also there's no distortion. It is more realistic. Like as you can see, like the jawline on this image. Now these weren't shot at different heights, these were shot at the same height. I've also made sure that when I'm lining these photos up, the eyes are on the same level, but the shoulders get slimmer in the 35. So even though the 35 distorts this image, obviously it might be for a female that's a bit larger, it might be a better lens selection. If you've got a female or a male that's a bit slimmer, then you might want to choose the 55mm over that, just because it gives you a slightly different depth of the image. Obviously again, the backdrop is a major thing for me, that when I'm shooting, I'd rather not spend my time editing in backdrops if I can avoid it, especially if you've got larger groups or anything like that. If you can get the distance back to get what you need in, I would shoot the 55 over the 35. Then with the 85mm lens, as you can see, again the face shape changes. It kind of goes, if you like, it goes back a bit. The neck again gets a little bit shorter and dumpier, and the shoulders, but the 85mm is an excellent lens. Again, if you move slightly different angles, it's all about your posing and stuff like that, so you just pose to suit the lenses more than anything. As you can see, like where I'm taking these, if you just look at the length of the arms as well, the length of the arms are longer in the 55mm. They shorten up a little bit on the 85, so then you just have to change your angle slightly just to compensate that, so the models don't look short and dumpy, because no one wants to look short and dumpy in their photos. Then we've got the 135. Again, there's not much difference between the 85 and the 135. The 85 and the 135. They're very similar lenses, but there is a difference between the 135 and the 55. Again, with the 135, the face looks slimmer than on the 55mm, because the distortion has started kicking in a little bit around the face. But then if you compare the 35mm to the 85, there's quite a big difference, and you can see just on that how much easier it would be to edit on the 135 to what it would be on the 35. Then the next thing that I go on to is about lens correction and stuff like that. I think most people probably know where the button is and how to fix that in Bridge and Lightroom. And I just wanted to show you quickly the differences, whether there's much difference or not between the different lenses. So this is the 35mm straight out of camera, and then when I click the lens correction button in Bridge, that's the difference. So it does brighten it up a little bit. It brings it, you can see there's a bit of distortion now, just for everything moving, and the edges get slightly brighter. Always make sure that you click your lens selection at the correction. And again, with the 55mm lens, obviously again there's a fair amount of distortion that is built into the lens. With them, it brightens it up a fair amount and makes a bit of a difference there. 85mm lens, again, a little bit, I'm not too sure whether it's the same amount or as the other ones, or just a little bit less. I think it's a little bit less than the 135 finally. The difference there is much minimal. Like the brightness, where it gets bright around the edges, is nowhere near as bright as what it was on the 35mm. And that's all I've got to say at the moment with regards to lens selection and shooting for portraits. If you've got any questions on this, feel free to ask me. I might not be able to answer you, but then again I might be able to answer you. There's so much to know about lenses and so on and so forth that it's an absolute minefield, but this is going off of what I've practiced, what I've done, what I've selected over the years. At first I didn't, when people used to say to me about distortion and that, I never used to be able to see the distortion in my images or other people's images. Like people used to say to me, oh, your image is distorted, and I never actually could see it myself until one day I was shooting and I was looking through my camera. I was shooting on 24-70 and I had it down to 24, and that instance I really noticed the distortion in the image, and it's something that you need to train yourself seeing. And now instantly when I see people's images show up, I could say whether they're shot on a 35mm lens in a small studio just by looking at people's hands. Hand sizes are a massive telltale sign for distortion. You'll see that hands look really massive, feet look really long, stuff like that when you're shooting, when you've got too close using a 35mm camera. So I hope this has been a little bit helpful for you, for understanding, and see if you can notice the difference yourselves and whether it makes you choose your lenses slightly different to what you would normally choose. Have a good weekend. Bye.